The day I found out I was a placeholder, I was putting away groceries. Yogurt in the fridge, sparkling water on the shelf, bread on the counter, and through the wall my boyfriend's voice, easy and laughing, explaining to his friends exactly what I was for. My name is Ava Norris. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a computer nerd, and I say that the way other people say they're doctors or architects, with the full weight of someone who knows exactly what they're worth. I know what I'm worth because I've watched what I build perform. I've watched systems I designed from scratch carry real weight in the real world, flag errors before they became disasters, scale cleanly when the pressure increased. I understand code the way some people understand music, intuitively, almost physically, the logic of it living somewhere in my body before it reaches my hands. Matt understood people. That was his gift. He could read a room in 30 seconds, identify the person who needed flattery versus the person who needed data, adjust his pitch mid-sentence without losing the thread. In a business built on luxury commercial real estate, low volume, high margin, a very small pool of competitors, that gift was worth a great deal. We met 5 years ago at a networking event I attended with a friend. Matt was working the room the way he always did, warm, unhurried, laughing at exactly the right moments. I was standing near the drinks table trying to look interested in a conversation about golf. He wandered over, made a joke, and that was that. 6 months in, he told me about the business idea, niche luxury commercial real estate sales, high-end clients, significant commissions, a market that rewarded reputation over volume. He had the vision and the relationships. What he didn't have was infrastructure. That's where I came in. I built his domain from the ground up, clean, professional, calibrated for the clients he was trying to attract. I built the client database that allowed him to track orders, manage workflow, flag when a process was stalling. I built the employee system so that when he eventually hired, the infrastructure could grow alongside the headcount without fracturing. I built the presentation tools, the internal systems, the client-facing interfaces that made his small operation look like something twice its size. He was the idea. I was the architecture that let the idea stand up. For 4 years we worked like that. Side by side, complementary, each of us doing what the other couldn't. I thought we were building something together. That's the part that matters. I genuinely thought we were building something that belonged to both of us. The Saturday it happened, I had gone out to meet some friends for lunch and come back earlier than expected. Matt's friends were over. They came most Saturdays, a rotating cast of men in their 30s who had collectively decided to keep living like they were 22. They were fine individually. As a group, they had a particular energy I found exhausting, so I was usually elsewhere when they visited. As I came in through the back door, the one that opens to the kitchen, closer to the garage. I had stopped at the store on the way home, a few things we needed, nothing significant. I set the bags on the counter and started putting things away. Through the wall, I could hear them, the low rumble of voices, the particular timbre of men laughing at something they find funnier than it is. Then I heard my name. Or not my name exactly. What I heard was Matt's voice, easy and unhurried and comfortable the way he only sounded with these particular people, saying the words, placeholder girlfriend. I set down the yogurt container. Another voice. Kendrick, I thought, repeated it back like it was a punchline. Placeholder girlfriend. More laughter. Then a third voice, quieter than the rest. I recognized it as Derek, the one in that group who had always seemed to occupy a slightly higher moral universe than the others. Matt, Ava is smart as heck. Why would you let that go? Matt laughed. I don't want a nerd for a wife. I stood very still. Business is already doing well, he said. By next year, revenues will double. You know what I want when this thing really takes off? I want a wife who looks like a model. Arm candy, someone who'll go along with what I say and be grateful for the millions I'm bringing in. A pause, the sound of someone setting down a glass. Ava's great for the business, but once things take off, I won't really need her anymore. I finished putting away the groceries. I don't know how I did it. Muscle memory, maybe. The yogurt, the sparkling water, the bread, everything in its place. Then I picked up my keys and walked back out the way I had come in. The windows of the living room faced the backyard, not the driveway. They hadn't seen me pull in. I got in my car and drove. I drove south without deciding to. I ended up in Hollywood, Florida, not California, at a beach parking lot that was nearly empty because the sky had gone gray and flat, and the rain was coming in sideways off the water. I found a spot that looked straight out over the boardwalk to the ocean and put money in the meter automatically because I had gotten a parking ticket before for being 5 minutes late, and the habit sticks even when your entire life has just rearranged itself. Then I sat, no tears, not yet. Just a numbness that was almost physical, like something had shorted out in my chest, and the signal wasn't getting through. The rain, when it came in earnest, felt appropriate. The waves were loud. I watched them and thought about the word placeholder. In tech, a placeholder is exactly what it sounds like. Temporary, functional for now, designed to be replaced when the real thing arrives. You don't maintain a placeholder, you don't invest in it. You use it for what you need and you pull it when it's served its purpose. That was what I was to him, not a partner, not someone he was building toward a future with. A utility, useful for this phase, already mentally scheduled for deprecation. I sat until the moon came out. I kept feeding the parking meter. That was the only decision I made all evening, every hour or so, reaching into my bag without looking and adding more time. Around 8, the texts from Matt started. "Where are you?" Then, a little later, "Did you eat? I thought you were making dinner." I didn't answer any of them. This wasn't strategy. I wasn't playing a long game in those hours in the parking lot. I was just genuinely unable to speak. Around 11, I finally typed back that my best friend Deja was having a crisis, and I was staying with her. It was the most I could manage. I found a hotel nearby. I don't remember much about checking in. The lobby, the elevator, the room. I remember pulling the comforter to the side the way I always do before I sleep, and then nothing until morning. I called Deja at 9 the next day. She answered on the second ring. "Tell me," she said, which was one of the many reasons she was my best friend. No preamble, no performance, just an immediate clearing of space for whatever I needed to put down. I told her. I told her the whole thing. The back door, the groceries, Matt's voice through the wall, the specific words in the specific order he had said them. I don't want a nerd for a wife. Deja was quiet through most of it, which was unusual for her. Deja's natural mode was commentary. When I finished, she said, "Where are you right now?" I told her the hotel name. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. She was there in 15. She knocked and I opened the door and she looked at me for a long moment. I must have looked exactly like someone who had sat in a parking lot for 6 hours and then slept in her clothes, and then she walked in and sat on the edge of the bed and said, "Tell me again, slower this time." So I told her again. By the time I finished the second time, Deja's expression had moved through several distinct phases. Shock, then something colder, then the particular set of her jaw that I recognized as her arriving at a conclusion. 5 years, she said. 5 years. And you built his whole operation? Most of it. Ava. She stopped, started again. This man has been running a business on your architecture, your systems, your infrastructure for years, while privately categorizing you as temporary. When she said it like that, stripped down, no softening, it landed differently than it had in my own head. In my own head, it had been a wound. Out of Deja's mouth, it sounded like a ledger entry. "I know," I said. "What do you want to do?" That was the right question. Not "what are you going to do?" which implies a script already written, but "what do you want?" Deja understood the difference. I thought about it. The tsunami was still there, still building, a pressure behind my ribs that hadn't found its shape yet. What I knew, sitting on that hotel bed in yesterday's clothes, was that whatever came next needed to be deliberate and slow. I had watched Matt in business long enough to know that the most effective moves rarely announced themselves. "I'm going to start slow," I said, "and then I'm going to crash everything." Deja looked at me. "I'm in," she said. "Whatever you need, I'm in. I might need you to stay quiet about it for a while." "I can do quiet." She paused. "For a while." I went home that afternoon. Matt was relieved to see me. or performed relief convincingly, which at this point amounted to the same thing. He asked about Deja, and I said she was okay, and he nodded and moved on in the way he always moved on from conversations about people he considered peripheral. He mentioned the presentation, 2 days out, a significant pitch to a pair of potential clients whose commission alone would represent a substantial quarterly revenue. He needed the deck finalized, the software updated, and a run-through practice session before the real thing. "Tomorrow?" he said. "Sure," I said. I made dinner. We watched something on television. He fell asleep on the couch the way he always did, one arm over his eyes, and I sat beside him and looked at his face and tried to locate the feeling I used to have when I looked at it. It wasn't there. What was there instead was clarity, cool and surprisingly steady. The practice session was scheduled for the next morning at 10. At 10, I was still in bed, not asleep. I had been awake since 7, lying on my side, watching the light change on the ceiling. When Matt knocked and opened the bedroom door at 10:15, I made the face of someone surfacing from deep sleep. "Practice session," he said. "Right." I sat up slowly. "I'm sorry. I'm not feeling great. Can we push it?" He looked at me. He was already dressed for it, which meant he'd been thinking about it since early morning, running through his talking points the way he did before anything important. "The presentation is tomorrow." "I know. I'll be fine by tonight. I'll finish the deck tonight and we can run through it in the morning." He accepted this. He always accepted things I said about the technical side because he had long ago categorized it as my domain and removed it from his active concerns. That delegation, which had once felt like trust, now felt like what it actually was, disengagement from anything he didn't consider his. I stayed in bed until noon. The deck was supposed to be finished by end of day. There were 12 slides, and I had completed 8 of them before the Saturday I don't like to think about anymore. The remaining 4 required content that Matt had promised to send me: notes on client expectations, revised financials, a summary of the proposal's key differentiators. He sent the notes at 4 in the afternoon. I opened them, read them, closed my laptop. By the time he came to check on my progress at 7, I had completed one of the 4 remaining slides. "Ava." He sat across from me at the kitchen table, in the way he sat when he was trying to project patience. "This pitch is significant. We need the full deck." "I know. The financial section is more complex than I expected. I want to make sure the data visualization is clean. I don't want to rush it and have something look off in front of clients." He couldn't argue with that. He didn't have the technical vocabulary to argue with it, which had always been, I now understood, part of the architecture of our relationship. He was fluent in persuasion. I was fluent in infrastructure. Neither of us spoke the other's language well enough to challenge it. "Can you finish tonight?" "I'll try," I said. I went to bed at 10 with 3 slides unfinished. The morning of the presentation, I told him the deck wasn't ready. I watched his face do what faces do when something load-bearing gives way without warning. The pitch was at 2 in the afternoon. The deck was the spine of the whole thing. His words delivered the relationship, but the deck delivered the credibility, the numbers, the visual proof that what he was offering was as sophisticated as he claimed. "What do you mean it's not ready?" "The data visualization on the financials, I'm not happy with how it's rendering, and there's a software update that one of the clients specifically requested we run before the meeting. I haven't had a chance to implement it." "Ava, this is tomorrow." His voice had an edge I recognized, the one that appeared when plans didn't execute the way he'd mapped them. "I know. I'm telling you now so you have time to adjust." He stared at me. "Adjust how? The whole presentation is built around the deck." "I know," I said again. "I'm sorry." I was not sorry. He went to the pitch with a partial deck and no software update. I don't know exactly what happened in that room. He came home quiet in the specific way that meant things had not gone well, ate dinner without talking much, went to bed early. He didn't ask me to debrief. He didn't know yet. But I knew that what had happened in that conference room was a version of what happened when the foundation shifts and the structure above it shows the stress. This was the water pulling back from the shore, the thing that happens right before the tsunami forms and hits the shore. Slow, quiet, the kind of thing that looks like recession before it reveals itself as preparation. Over the following 2 weeks, I continued to forget things. I forgot to renew the SSL certificate on his business domain, which meant the site threw a security warning to anyone who visited. In his industry, where trust was the primary currency, a security warning on your website was the kind of thing clients noticed and mentioned to other clients. He caught it after 3 days. 3 days during which 2 prospect inquiries had bounced off the site's error page. I forgot to update the client database with the new intake protocol we had discussed in September. New clients who reached out through the site were routed to an old form, which fed into an outdated pipeline, which meant follow-up correspondence was delayed and in 2 cases missed entirely. I forgot to run the monthly system audit that kept his workflow flags calibrated. Without it, the flags started misfiring, alerting him to non-issues while missing actual bottlenecks. His operations, which had been running with the precision of something well-engineered, began to feel unreliable in a way he couldn't diagnose. He came to me each time. Each time I listened carefully, nodded, explained it in the way I always explained technical problems, with just enough detail to seem credible and just enough complexity to make the solution seem non-trivial. And then I forgot to fix that too. "Something's off," he said one evening. "I know," I said. "I'm looking into it." "The business is starting to feel shaky, Ava. The systems don't feel reliable anymore." "I understand. It's a complex interdependency issue. Give me some time." Don't you love the way that sounds? Complex interdependency. The cold, calibrated side of me chuckled at that response. He gave me time. What he didn't know was that the shakiness wasn't an issue. It was a preview. I had been thinking in the quiet of those 2 weeks about what I had actually built. Not in the sentimental sense. I had moved past sentiment fairly efficiently. I mean technically. What existed in Matt's business, that was mine. The domain registration was in my name. I had set it up in the early days of the business when we were moving fast, and it was simply easier for me to manage it directly, and we had never transferred it. The hosting account, same story. My credit card, my login, my administrative access. The client database was built on a platform I had licensed and customized. The license was in my name. The customization, the intake protocols, the workflow logic, the flagging system was proprietary work I had developed and never formally transferred to the business entity. The employee management system, which he now used to manage 4 people, had been built using a framework I held the account for. None of this had ever been formalized. We were, as far as the paperwork was concerned, a couple running a household together, with me providing, what exactly? Informal support? Pro bono infrastructure? There was no contract, no equity agreement, no documentation of what I had contributed or what it was worth. I had given him everything and put nothing in writing. That was a mistake, but mistakes, I have found, are often reversible if you still hold the keys. I happen to still hold all the keys. I moved on a Thursday. I chose Thursday because Matt had client calls in the morning and a site visit in the afternoon and wouldn't be home before 6. I had been quietly moving things for a week. Small things first. Books, personal electronics, the items that live in the margins of a shared space and get noticed only in their absence. Then the larger things, over 2 trips with Deja's SUV, while Matt was at work and none of the neighbors had reason to find it remarkable. What I left behind was the furniture we had bought together, which is to say the furniture I had paid for roughly 60% of, and the kitchen equipment, and the art we'd chosen at a market in Wynwood that I had loved and now couldn't look at without feeling something I didn't want to feel. I left all of it. I was not interested in dragging the past into whatever came next. On Thursday morning, while Matt was on his first client call, I transferred the domain registration out of my name. I did not transfer it to him. I simply moved it to a holding account, inactive, pointing nowhere. I let the hosting lapse. The business website, the clean, professional, client-calibrated site I had built from scratch to anchor his entire operation, went dark. I logged into the client database platform and downgraded the license to the free tier. The free tier held 50 records. Matt had over 200 active clients. The system, politely and automatically, archived everything above the limit into a format that required a paid license to access. The employee management system I suspended entirely. The 4 people who worked for Matt would have shown up the following Monday to find their scheduling and task management portal offline. Then I changed every administrative password I held, every account, every platform, everything I had built and maintained and updated and repaired for 4 years. Behind my own login, with my own credentials. I changed all of it. And then I sent Matt a message. The message was not long. I had thought about making it long, had written at various points in the preceding 2 weeks, versions that were 3 paragraphs and versions that were a page and a half, versions that explained everything and versions that said almost nothing. What I arrived at in the end was this. Matt, I heard what you said to your friends about me being a placeholder. I know what I am to you and what you think you'll no longer need. I've made some changes accordingly. The domain, hosting, client database, and employee platform are all in my name and under my control. I've also spoken to a lawyer about what my contributions to this business represent in terms of equity and compensation. I'll be out of the house by end of day. The utility accounts I've been paying, electricity, internet, the business line, will be transferred to you this week. I wish you well. I read it twice. Added nothing, removed nothing, sent it. His first call came 47 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. The second came 8 minutes after that. Then a text. Ava, what did you do to the site? Then, the database isn't working. Then, please call me, this is serious, clients are already reaching out. Then, the register shifting slightly. Ava, I need to talk to you. I was in Deja's guest room by then, sitting on the bed with a glass of water, reading the texts as they came in with the specific calm of someone who has been in the numb phase and has come out the other side into something else entirely. He's calling again, Deja said from the doorway. I know. Are you going to answer? I thought about it. Not today. She nodded, leaned against the doorframe. How do you feel? I considered the question honestly. The tsunami had hit. Not with the chaos I had imagined in that parking lot on Saturday night, not the theatrical crash I might have scripted if I'd been scripting. Something quieter. The wave had come in and receded and left the shore rearranged, and I was standing on different ground than I had been a month ago, and the ground was, to my own surprise, solid. Like myself? I said. Deja smiled, small and real. Good. The lawyer's name was Philippa Odell. Deja had recommended her. She specialized in business disputes and what she called informal partnership arrangements, which was the legal way of describing what I had with Matt. Years of material contribution to a business with no formal structure acknowledging it. What you're describing, Patricia said on our first call, is a situation where your labor, intellectual property, and ongoing operational support constituted a significant contribution to the growth of a business from which you received no equity, no compensation beyond shared living expenses, and no formal recognition. That's accurate, I said. The domain and hosting are yours outright. That's not a question. It's a matter of registration. The database and employee platform, the licensed software, those are yours by account. The proprietary customization work you did is more nuanced, but there's an argument for trade secret protection on your specific implementations, particularly if you never signed anything transferring them. I never signed anything, I said. Then we have things to discuss. We discussed them. I am not going to walk through the details of what followed. It's still in motion in the way these things tend to be, slower than you want, and more complicated than anyone tells you it will be. What I will say is that Philippa sent Matt a letter within 2 weeks of our first meeting, and that the letter outlined in specific and documented terms what my contributions to his business represented, and what a reasonable valuation of those contributions might look like, and what remedies we were prepared to pursue if the matter couldn't be resolved without them. His response came through his own lawyer. The tone was conciliatory in a way that told me things were shakier over there than Matt would ever have admitted to me directly. I'm not going to tell you I don't think about what might have been. That would be a lie, and I've been too precise in this accounting to start lying now. I think about it sometimes, the version of the next 5 years where I didn't come in through the back door, where I didn't hear what I heard and went on building a business that technically had my name on none of it, for a man who was quietly planning his exit from me the whole time. I think about that version and I feel something that is not quite gratitude but lives in the same neighborhood. If I had to name it, I would call it information. I received information. Painful, clarifying, irreversible information. I know some people, faced with what I found, would have had a conversation, would have confronted, would have given him the chance to explain himself, would have let him make the case for why placeholder didn't mean what it sounded like. I understand that impulse. I even respect it in other people. That wasn't what I needed. What I needed was to understand the full shape of what had been built. His business and mine, what was his and what was mine, what could be separated and what couldn't, and to make my decisions with that understanding complete. I am, at my core, a systems person. I believe in understanding the architecture before you start pulling things apart. I believe in knowing which components are load-bearing before you remove them. I knew exactly which components were load-bearing. I waited until I'd confirmed it, and then I pulled them. I have a one-bedroom apartment now, 15 minutes from Deja and closer to the water than anything I've lived in before. I set up my home office in the second week. Monitors, external drive, the good chair that I had fought Matt about for 2 years because he thought it was too industrial for the aesthetic of the spare room we shared. The chair is excellent. I was right about it. I'm consulting now independently for 3 clients who found me through the kind of professional network you build quietly over years without realizing its value. One of them is in commercial real estate, not Matt's niche, but adjacent, and they needed exactly what I'm good at. I built their client management system in 3 weeks. Clean, scalable, flagging protocols calibrated to their specific workflow. It performed immediately. My name is on the contract, and I've been thinking a lot in the weeks since all of this about what I wish I had done differently. Not the big things. I don't spend time wishing I had never helped him, never built what I built. I was good at what I did. The work was real. The systems performed. What I wish I had done is put my name on them while I was building them, not out of suspicion, not because I saw this coming. I didn't. But because your name on your work is not a gesture of distrust, it's a gesture of respect for what you've made. You built something. You should be able to say so. I know that now. I won't forget it again. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe.